Hi, this is Steve Guarona, and you're listening to Campus Public Safety Online from the National Center for Campus Public Safety. Before I introduce today's session, here's a brief orientation to the Adobe Connect interface we're using. Your browser right now is showing the title slide for today's talk. On the left side of your screen, you'll see a box labeled Questions and Comments where you can read and type messages. And there's a tab labeled Everyone at the bottom of this box, and that's the tab you'll use for all of your general messages, including questions and comments for our speakers. We'll be breaking for questions several times during the presentation, so please do not hold your questions to the end. You can also send direct messages to a specific person by hovering your cursor over a name in the attendee list. One of those names is Technical Help, and that's the place to go if you run into technical problems. We're also monitoring Twitter for your questions and comments. Use hashtag NCCPSwebinar. If you missed part of today's conversation, or if you want to see some or all of it again, this webinar is being recorded and captioned. The link will be available shortly after the webinar on the NCCPS Webinars page, and watch your email for a link to a brief evaluation survey requesting your reactions and comments on today's session. Please take a minute to respond to that survey when the link arrives. We do appreciate your feedback. And now for our presentation. C.P.T.E.D is Crime Prevention Through Environmental Design, an approach to deterring crime using environmental design and by creating a safer physical and built environment. We're talking buildings, roads, parking lots, lighting, access control, maintenance, windows, entrances, signage, landscaping, sidewalks, and more. Today we're welcoming two experts in the field to tell us what C.P.T.E.D is all about and why it's of value, and how your campus can adopt C.P.T.E.D principles and deploy its own C.P.T.E.D action plan. Ed Book currently serves as the Chief of Police, College Emergency Management Coordinator, and Behavioral Intervention Team Chair at Santa Fe College in Gainesville, Florida. He's an adjunct instructor in the Organizational Management Program and teaches to public safety recruits. Ed retired from the Gainesville Police Department as the district commander and captain and has more than 32 years of experience as a law enforcement official. Ernie Long is a career crime prevention specialist, first certified in 1983 while employed as a police officer in New Jersey. He served as a patrolman, detective, and sergeant, and after obtaining a bachelor's degree in criminal justice, he became an investigator for the state of New Jersey. Ernie currently serves as the treasurer of the Florida Design Out Crime Association and as crime prevention coordinator for the city of Aventura. Ed Book and Ernie Long, welcome to Campus Public Safety Online. Ed, I believe you're going to kick things off.
I certainly am, and I thank you so much. Thank you to the National Center for Campus Public Safety for hosting this webinar. Both myself and my co-presenter this morning, Ernie, are very, very passionate about both the umbrella of crime prevention and, more importantly, this concept under that umbrella that we call C.P.T.E.D, Crime Prevention Through Environmental Design. So thank you to NCCPS, and we are presenting this morning on behalf of the Florida Design Out Crime Association. As we are sitting in a studio doing the webinar, they actually are having their quarterly meeting about 100 yards from us and watching as part of this particular presentation. It's also important to note that we have several best practices partners that are with us this afternoon, and you can see them here on this particular slide. My host institution, obviously Santa Fe College in Gainesville, Florida. We welcome the National Crime Prevention Council, the National Institute of Crime Prevention, an Association of Florida Colleges, which today has a brand new, less than 1-year-old Campus Safety Commission, which unites our colleges in best practices related to safety and security, and the Campus Security Report, which is a periodical which we're so happy to be a part of. So thank you to all of those and for putting out this information. So what are we talking about this afternoon? I hope for all the higher educational professionals that are across the nation today, before we dive into this thing called C.P.T.E.D, we need to take stock for a moment of what our comprehensive safety looks like at all our individual institutions, what it looks like on your particular campus. Often, our campus community is very unaware of the vast array of programs that help make our environment safe for everyone. That's as true at Santa Fe College as I think it probably is for other higher education professionals. Well, this is a snapshot of my institution, and what we teach in orientation are students and staff and faculty and visitors. And we cover these things so that they understand, and this is only a snapshot, what we have in store for them and what they are a part of. It's the great umbrella of comprehensive safety. And then we explain their critical role in all of these things. Well, C.P.T.E.D, as you can see in that lower right corner, is a piece of comprehensive safety at our institution, and that's what we're focusing on today. The key for professionals on the webinar is, what does your institution look like, and what are you telling your staff and students about the array of things that help make our institutions prepared? You know, my co-presenter Ernie, when he speaks to organizations, always talks about this kind of interesting concept. C.P.T.E.D as a formalized concept is only about 45 years old. But when you look at this moat, and this happens to be a snapshot of Fort Delaware, that goes back hundreds and hundreds of years. So C.P.T.E.D and target hardening and the things that make our facilities and our infrastructure and our buildings safe were well in place a long time before we started teaching it and talking about terminology. So you look here at this moat and you see, you know, soldiers did not even probably realize that the concepts in place, water preventing entry, defined entranceways, and we'll talk about that, windows or portals that you can see from all different sides, something we call natural surveillance, fencing and brick to protect everyone, and good natural sight lines were in place even back there with Fort Delaware. We always define. Whenever we're doing something, we always define what we're speaking about. And this is the acronym. All acronyms stand for something. And in this case, C.P.T.E.D is Crime Prevention Through Environmental Design. Really, the more institution-friendly term for this is designing out crime. And it's always important to provide a couple of different specific leaders in the field. You have a couple leaders in the field and their definitions and what this means. This will probably be the only thing we read to the audience. Proper design and effective use of the built environment, focus on that, can lead to a reduction in the fear and incidence of crime and an improvement in the quality of life. What we're saying here, and this is this person who we've cited, Timothy Crow, is basically one of the founders of C.P.T.E.D, is that the physical environment can be manipulated. The physical environment can be manipulated to produce behavioral effects which reduce crime. What are we saying there for higher education? How we build and design our campuses can go a long way towards how people act and behave while they are here. One other, we talked about at the beginning about how C.P.T.E.D is under this umbrella of crime prevention, and we're not going to spend much time here, but what we want you to understand is you can have something, for example, like a neighborhood where they have Constantine wire and a guard shack and armed guards and potentially, as you know, you see comically here, helicopters and all the different aspects that target hard and make invulnerable our different neighborhoods and, for that matter, our different campuses. But the reality is C.P.T.E.D is complementary to target hardening and also goes a long way to making sure that we have a safe environment. When you look at this bottom photo of a dilapidated neighborhood, this is the opposite of what we want our campuses and higher ed institutions to look like. And you're going to see many photographs of many different campuses in the slides over the next few minutes. Important that crime, in the term crime prevention through environmental design, really puts the burden and the focus on law enforcement, and C.P.T.E.D is way more broad than law enforcement. If there was a term we could remove from there, it would be that, because it makes people think about law enforcement, and the reality is we all, whether we're students affairs professionals, counseling, financial aid, administrators, higher ed, you name it, we all can deal with crime prevention through environmental design. In any concept, you have terminology. Now, our focus is not on the terminology here, but these are the terms that Ernie, as our crime prevention coordinator, is going to speak with you. You can be familiar with the terms, but more important than that is understand what they mean for the manner in which we can change our built environment. So here they are. I'm going to read them, and then we're going to let Ernie take over and explain kind of the ins and outs of what you're looking at as far as comprehensive safety. Natural surveillance, access control, territorial reinforcement, place maintenance, activity generation, and obviously, even when you talk about the built environment, if you don't start with people, you're not going to get very far. So with that, I'm going to let Ernie kind of take it away.
Thank you, Ed. We're going to talk about natural surveillance. And don't get hung up on all the definitions, because I had to sit through this class twice in order to understand C.P.T.E.D. So it's pretty easy once you figure out the concepts. People, legitimate users of a space, like to see and be seen by other people. Now, bad guys are different. They require privacy to carry out their activities. Our job as C.P.T.E.D practitioners is to deny them the privacy they need to carry out their illegal activities. If a bad guy sees something he wants, the first thing he does is look around to see if anyone is watching. If someone is watching, they go elsewhere. There are lots of ways to increase surveillance: locating activity generators in parking lots, using convex mirrors to increase your visibility, trimming the bushes and trees, and lighting up the area. Surveillance increases the chance the bad guy will be seen and makes legitimate users more comfortable. Ed likes to say, put eyes on the prize, and I kind of like that term, so I'm going to steal that from him. Next part is access control. Oh, I'm sorry. Natural surveillance. This slide, what can you see? Now, if you look at the top left-hand corner, you'll see the windows are open into the student's area so that you can always look out. There's always the possibility someone can see you. You look at the little gazebo, you see no ambush points. There's no place for a bad guy to hide. The picture in the center is your grounds maintenance, and it's very, very important that you talk to them because they're out there every week cutting the grass, trimming the bushes. But if you don't tell them how they have to be trimmed, they're not going to know. This is why you need to involve them in your whole program. The upper right-hand corner, you can see good sight lines to the entrance, so anybody inside the building can see what's coming at them. Okay, access control. Now, the concept of access control is simple. If you control access to an area, you can control crime in that area. Access control is accomplished with fences, gates, and anything that directs people into and out of areas. It is said that criminals are pack animals. They like to enter an area, commit the crime, and then leave by a different route. Making them enter and leave by the same route puts the bad guy off balance. A lot of neighborhoods, I think it started in Tampa, experienced 30 and 40% reductions in residential burglaries by making their neighborhoods one way in and one way out. Reducing access reduces crime. On the slides for access control, you can see a college campus in the upper left-hand corner. Sidewalks clearly defined, no low-hanging shrubs to hide behind. In the lower left-hand corner, you see trees, curbing, crosswalks, things that indicate where people are supposed to cross and walk. Upper right-hand corner, curbings are marked, the street's wide open. Lower right, crosswalks. Now, crosswalks are always a challenge. We're working on them constantly to improve them. The final concept I'm going to talk about today is territorial reinforcement. Now, I know that's a mouthful, but keep it simple. Think ownership. Areas that show ownership tend to be better cared for than areas that appear abandoned. Always make sure your property shows ownership, because if you don't own it, someone else will, and it may not be someone you like. In the city of Aventura, we show ownership by marking everything with our logo. Bus benches, trash cans, and every other light pole in the city has our seal and our banner on. We do that for two reasons. One, we're kind of show-offs, and are very proud of our city. Two, we want everyone to know that this is ours and we take care of it. Visitors and residents alike take more pride in the area, and that reduces problems. Ownership influences people's behavior. Territorial reinforcement, you see the upper left-hand side is a fence. Now that's what we call a C.P.T.E.D fence because you can see in and out of it. And that's the only type of fencing we allow in the city of Aventura. Make sure that if you use fencing for territorial reinforcement that you don't use a stockade fence that you can't see through, because you're going to make more problems with that type of fencing than you're going to leave. In the upper right-hand corner, you see Santa Fe College has marked pretty much everything on their campus. We were walking over here today, the trash cans are marked, the flagpoles, everything. It's a good thing. Lower left, you see a parking area, and you see the trees are trimmed to the proper height so that there's no hiding spots. In the lower right-hand corner, you see the entrance sign for Santa Fe College. It's an informational sign. It's one of those "You Are Here" signs. Prevents you from getting lost, lets you know where you're at. It's also called wayfinding.
So I think where we're at this point, thank you, Ernie, is Ernie's talked about three of those key terminology concepts of CPTED, and I think it's probably appropriate to break here if the NCCPS staff would like us to do so, and give the opportunity before we move into a couple of much more intuitive types of concepts as it relates to designing out crime on our higher education institutions.
Thank you, Ed. You are listening to Campus Public Safety Online, and today we're hosting Ed Book and Ernie Long. We're talking about CPTED, designing safety on higher ed campuses. If you have a comment or a question for Ed and Ernie anytime during this presentation, type it into that space at the bottom of the questions and comments pod on the left side of your screen. We've got a couple of breaks planned, and we will be asking those questions to Ed and Ernie. One of the questions that actually came in during the registration process, guys, somebody wonders if there are any certifications related to CPTED. Who wants to take that one on?
There actually is. Now, we can say that as it relates to credentialing, there is no one particular organization that does that, and that's the be-all, end-all. However, you're going to see in one of our slides, for example, in the state of Florida, if you're in the southeastern region, we have the Florida Attorney General's Office, which provides a Crime Prevention Training Institute, FCPTI. And that institute provides formalized training. Both Ernie and I are actually what we call practitioners of CPTED. So that's an example. That's one credentialing organization. Another credentialing organization, there are some private organizations. One of our partners today, NICP, the National Institute of Crime Prevention, provides training and actually goes all over the nation and does that. So it's an excellent question, and there is many organizations, if you put in CPTED, that will provide you formalized training and perhaps a certificate that then goes along with that.
Can you talk about CPTED as it applies to crosswalks and sidewalks?
We've had some challenges. This is Ernie Long. We've had some challenges with crosswalks because we have to educate the public on what the purpose of the crosswalk is. We've had a lot of problems with them in Aventura with people running over our signs. We started off putting signs in the middle of the road that said this was a crosswalk and to stop for people, and the guy started running over the sign. So now we've taken that and put flashing lights on the side that people activate when they walk up to the crosswalk. Again, keeping the area clear, keeping it well marked. Those are all things that increase the safety of those intersections.
Matt Labons wonders if you have thoughts regarding the open view classroom concept as it relates to active shooters or armed intruders.
It's a fantastic question, and it's one that we wrestle with the advantages and disadvantages of basically being able to lock down classrooms and offices and administrative space, and balancing that with the fact that we want people to have access to those. Obviously, we're an open access institution, and universities and colleges have campuses where, other than dorms, which typically do have lockdown capabilities, you balance some things. So what's very important to think about as it relates to active shooter or active threat response, that's obviously a huge trend in higher ed these days, is think about what you're teaching your staff. Two specific curriculums that are very well available. One is free, that's Run, Hide, Fight. That was put together by the Department of Homeland Security. Many institutions use that, and it talks about how you secure your classroom space and your administrative space during that. And it gives you opportunities, if you can't lock down, how to, for example, barricade. Another one that's a paid vendor that's very popular, especially in K through 12, is ALICE. And again, that's an acronym, ALICE. That typically has more justification in some of the lower grades, but these are two programs that deal with how you're securing your space when facing an active threat.
Let me squeeze in one more question during this break. Does labeling of light poles, university signs, wind up being graffiti generation locations for random tagging?
I would like very much to talk about graffiti. Thank you. The key to controlling graffiti in any situation is quick removal of that graffiti. Now, I drive around the city of Aventura every day looking for tags and things like that that people have put up on poles and trash cans and things like that. We remove it immediately, and you'd be amazed at how little it comes back to that same location again. What we've found is that you can drive anywhere in Miami-Dade County and see graffiti in just about every city except one, and that's the city of Aventura. The key to it is quick removal. You're going to get graffiti. People are going to try it because they want to put it up there and then show all their friends. Well, if they put it up there and they come back the next day and it's gone, the incentive to put it back up there drops to nothing. So we've been very, very successful with quick removal.
Graffiti, I recognize that Ernie in one time had told me that the difference between graffiti and public art, and ironically we're going to talk about this here in just a couple of slides, is permissions. So that's a very important distinction because, for example, on my college we have public art and we have people who draw and paint and do chalk art on the sidewalks, but we have problems with it when they are not permitted.
Okay, Ed and Ernie, thanks. Keep those questions coming. We won't lose them, but in the meantime, we're going to let our speakers get back to their presentation at slide 15.
All right, well, thank you very much. So these last two concepts are ones that, whether you have terminology that explains or not, are much more intuitive, meaning they're things that we probably see and do every day or think kind of exudes that concept of safety and security and makes something feel cared for, and yet we've got some terminology that goes with it. So one is this place maintenance term that you see. That, by the way, for those educated higher institution personnel on it, that's a Princeton University campus photograph. Almost all the photographs, like I said in this presentation, are various higher ed campuses. And what this says is, if it's well maintained, if it gives the appearance to criminals that the institution is cared for or are watching out for each other, crime is low. Opportunity to do bad and nefarious things is low. When you show a campus like this and you use a strategy of ensuring that it's kept up, it's maintained, it's well cared for, people are invested in that particular institution and their campus, you will have less opportunity for people to feel like they can do something. Steal, for example, theft is the #1 crime, the #1 what we call Uniform Crime Report crime on all higher ed campuses. Well, if they don't feel like they can steal because people are not leaving things and it's not dilapidated, we showed a picture about that, opportunity reduces, crime reduces, the campus is safer. What I'd like you to think about is this term called the broken window theory of policing. And what that means is, in a nutshell, if you fix the little things, big things will tend to go away. We showed a preceding picture that dealt with boarded up windows, high grass, unpainted surfaces. And all that does is tell somebody nobody cares. And that provides the opportunity for someone who comes in to do something that we don't want them to do. Well, it's the same thing with our campuses. Pick up Ernie's favorite line that we stole here, trashy areas attract trashy people. And realize place maintenance is nothing more than the examples we provided here. You know, being litter-free, putting fresh coats of paint, having well-maintained landscaping and shrubbery. Obviously, we've already spoke about graffiti, and putting items in their place. So let's look at a couple of examples of place maintenance. I can tell you I took the photos from my campus, and they're not staged photos. People often overlook at our higher education institutions facility staff and ground crews and student affairs staff, people who are very familiar with their campuses. They know what's going on. Look at these photographs. You have great sight lines, for example, for shrubbery. You can see under or over those things. There's a picture here, and if we were to blow this up, you would see public art. Public art, again, is not graffiti. They are permitted. There's a picture of a sidewalk. That sidewalk is simply showing that it looks like it's clean, and it is. I don't think that it's any one of our particular person's jobs as we're walking down a campus to pick up a piece of trash, but I know if President Sasser, who happens to be at my institution, walks down the sidewalk, I've seen him grab trash and throw it into garbage. That is my job. My job is to make sure that our environment is cared for and we're utilizing place maintenance. Even the garbage cans and garbage receptacles should be clean. There shouldn't be trash all around them. If there is, somebody needs to get that trash into the trash can. And then there's a picture right in the middle here, which would be the opposite of place maintenance. If a person can hide behind it and create something we call ambush points, we may have a problem. And here's the last concept, and again, it's another intuitive concept, and one that I think is really interesting, and I didn't understand for a long period of time. And what this says is, put safe activities in unsafe places. Now, even if you have a safe campus, what you want to do is take things like public art and murals. These are campus photographs right here. Put water features. Schedule special events. Use your bus depots to bring people around to that particular area. Look at book drops. Look at ATM machines. Where are these items? Activity generation says, where you put things, people will come. And you want those things where you want people to be. It makes it very difficult for someone to be undetected in an area. So let's look at a couple of examples. Only one of these photographs is not from Santa Fe, but I think there was a question that had been submitted to us in advance about, for example, bike theft. That's the bane of many campuses. Well, if you put bike racks and you don't hide them behind buildings, but you put them, for example, adjacent to roads, there may be the disadvantage that means somebody can pull up, but the advantage is most of the people are not interested in taking that bike. They see the activity, you can watch it. Here in this particular case, it's right next to an entranceway to a campus. You put the bike racks where other people are doing other things. If the bike racks are well maintained, they don't detract from your campus. Here's some other activities. A library book drop is open 24/7. Well, it's in this particular case, it's in a roadway right next to a natural sciences building, and if you were to see a big picture or cutout, it's next to a police department. The middle photograph is a bike repair station. We put it right near where some of our bike racks are, and the amount of people who utilize this simple thing, it's an activity generator, is staggering. This ATM machine, make sure you put them where people can see them. This ATM machine is right next to our bookstore, so that we don't have someone going at 1 in the morning to an isolated ATM machine, and we talked about bus depots. So these are the two things that we kind of talked about, place maintenance and activity generation, and now we're going to kind of rapidly go through just some further examples of CPTED and design out crime skills, and for that, Ernie's going to flip through several concrete examples.
Thanks again, Ed. This is Ernie Long. We're going to test your CPTED and design out crime skills. We're going to show you some pictures and let you look at them and start thinking about them. Now, in the upper left, you see a before picture and an after picture. Now, what I noticed when I looked at this, first thing I saw was a shopping cart in the lower left. Shopping carts are a problem everywhere, and you have to pick them up because they do make the place look trashy. But you notice that they moved the trash cans over to a different location. Where you locate a trash can or a dumpster can be problematic because you take out the trash pretty much the same time, and somebody can be out there waiting for you. On the right-hand side, you see the improvement. They put up a new fence. They've moved the trash cans over so they're not a hiding place anymore, and they've done some painting, cleaning, fixing up, that sort of thing. In the lower left, you see a streetscape, and it's just a regular street. It looks like it's Gainesville, was it? Ed? No? All right. And you see that they've increased the amount of sidewalk there. They've made it more pedestrian-friendly. They put a banner on the pole identifying what city it is. There's probably a city seal. On the corner, they put some bollards in, which gives you a safety zone if you're getting ready to cross the street. Plenty of pedestrian space, fresh paint on the building. They've cut the grass, trimmed the bushes. It looks much nicer. On the next pictures, you see on the left-hand side, upper and lower, is a doctor's office. Let's say a medical office. In the first picture, there's no signage. If there is signage, it's behind that big bush there by the front door, and you can't see the front door very well. The landscaping's all wrong. It obscures the building. Now, I'm not anti-tree, but I do think that you need good, clear sight lines. So now in the lower left corner, you see they've put up a sign, they've trimmed the bushes. You can now see the front door, which is a focus point. You'll be able to tell where you have to enter the building. It makes it much more pleasant. Now in the upper right-hand corner, you see an apartment building. And if you look down in the lower right of that picture, you'll see the unofficial sidewalk that the pedestrians have put in there. They've actually worn a path through the grass.
That's actually a dorm on one of our higher education campuses, so thought that was important to point out.
Okay. Looked to me like an apartment building. All right, in the lower right-hand corner, you'll see they put a fence up to define who has that property. They put a little, looks like a bus shelter in the front. They've got a mailbox set up there. They've improved the landscaping tremendously. They actually added more landscaping. Parking close to the building and a sidewalk. So there's plenty of things that have improved that property, and it's, you know, they went really whole hog on that particular project and really did a nice job on it. Okay, now in the upper left-hand corner you see bollards. Now what I try to teach everybody is that you always try to separate pedestrians from vehicles, because the first time mom comes to pick up her kids with the latte in one hand and the cell phone in the other, steps on the brake or the gas instead of the brake, you're going to have a tragedy instead of just a wrecked car. You see the second picture has got a bunch of trash in it. The bench is a CPTED bench, so you keep people from sleeping on that bench. If you know there's a problem, you avoid the problem in the first place. That's the whole concept of CPTED. Now in the far right picture, now that's an area on Santa Fe campus, right, Ed?
Yes, sir.
And I like it. I like the way it looks over you've got people that can sit there, but Ed tells me the problem is that's a flat top on that wall, and that the kids sit on it. So sometimes you can actually build a problem into an area if you're not thinking about it. In the middle, the center, the left-hand picture, you see a house. You can't see the front door. Bushes all over the house. So that's kind of problematic. You want to try to be able to see out of your windows, and you want people to be able to see you. Next picture is a parking lot. It's well lit. It's well marked. And there's a lot of things to do with lighting, and that's a whole other class. The lower picture, the lowest one in the center, that's a campus. It's well marked. You can see the sidewalk. The trimming is done properly. The sight lines are good. It's a beautiful campus.
So here's what we've done at this point. We've basically given you some photographs and pictures that basically back up the terminology that we spoke about. And this probably, before we kind of finish up with some action plan type of items, might be an appropriate place to break.
Thanks, Ed. A few slides ago, you talked about activity generation. Can you say more about that?
Certainly. So what is activity generation? In a nutshell, it's putting things, activities, events, and items that we want people to do in areas of campus. A water park, not that we're going to have that on a campus, is one, but a water fountain may be one of those things, or water features. Why is that? People like to look at it. They hang out on it. For those institutions that have little schools or preschools, a preschool and a playground is a thing that creates activity generation. Public art, all of our campuses are probably have fine arts programs of some sort, and that can be murals, that can be chalk art on the sidewalk, that can be paintings that we have in our buildings or outside our buildings. People come to see those things, and the people who are coming to see those things are not looking to create issues for our higher education institutions. So activity generation in a nutshell is put things and activities in places on our campus that bring people. And then an example of kind of the converse of that is an ATM does bring legitimate users. This term we call legitimate users, us. But we do not want the ATM to be a particular area of hazard. So if you have ATMs on your campus, and we all do, you have to think long and hard about where are you placing them so that there's always, remember we talked about, eyes on the prize.
Summer Ann Miller wonders if you have any specific recommendations for parking garages.
I do, as a matter of fact. This is Ernie Long. Publix has been very successful with the design of their parking lots down by the shore or the beach. We have to build things on the second floor because you're not allowed to build anything on the lower level because you get a wave comes in and it'll flood everything out. But now you've got a parking lot under a building that's shaded, so you have to light it up 24 hours a day. So what Publix did was the simplest thing they could possibly do, and it worked perfectly. They put their break area for their employees in the parking lot, in the parking garage, so to speak. And every time somebody goes down for a smoke break or to drink a cup of coffee or to have lunch, they're sitting at this picnic table watching the parking lot. No security guard, doesn't cost them anything. It's perfect.
Thanks. Is there low-hanging fruit that student affairs staff can address on campus?
Well, that's a question that we call almost a setup in that regard, because we have just coming up here in our action plan exactly that, low-hanging fruit, things that are potentially inexpensive and doable at all our institutions.
How do you measure CPTED's effectiveness and cost saving? Is it in monetary terms?
Statistics?
It's a great question. The absence of anything is always difficult to advertise. So two particular ways on higher education campuses is via this thing we called Clery statistics, C-L-E-R-Y, and for those higher education professionals on the line, they know what that is. If those are decreasing, you can't say particularly that they're because of the manner in which we're building our structure or designing our campuses, but you know if they're going down and we're doing the right things, that's probably a contributing factor. The other thing is crime statistics. The things that almost every law enforcement agency, whether you have that or a security department on your campus, reports to the FBI. Again, if you see those declining or they're low or in perspective in comparison to other municipalities or campuses, you're doing the right thing and you see that they have some issues with the way their campus is designed. Those are two statistical ways, everybody wants that, to define safety. What we do at our campus is we teach our custodians and our front desk crew, a lot of our interns and students, and our grounds crew about these terms. And we tell them, forget the terms. Understand what you're doing and why it's safe, and when they buy into the fact that their job, besides keeping our campus beautiful, is to make it safer, I think that that's one of those anecdotal ways by teaching your staff and students that you will see good results.
One more question during this break. Sean Fay says an earlier slide used a phrase like putting safe activities in unsafe areas. Can you explain?
Yeah, there's two good examples. Bike racks, historically on campuses, sometimes they are placed in areas that hide the fact that, bikes without wheels, they get rusty. They put them in the backs of buildings. They put them next to trash receptacles. They hide them. And there are so many well-designed bicycle rack type of structures these days that we don't have to hide them. If you put them in the back of a building and they're not in a well-lit area, then you have put a safe activity in an unsafe place. On the other hand, if you put it out front, you put it next to a road like we showed, that's a good example. The other one I just spoke to, and that's where are you putting areas that distribute cash? Where are your where are your ATM machines? Where are your finance and cashiers? They need to be in places where other people can see them, they know them, and they're not placed in areas that make it difficult for people to find them. That's two examples.
Tremendous. Thanks. We'll let you get back to your presentation. Now keep those questions coming. We've got one more break before the end.
All right. So here we are. We've kind of talked about these principles of CPTED and the terminology, and we've kind of given you those 5 principles. And now the kids, how do you turn that into action? How do you take what we're talking about, designing on campus, short of building a new building? We have had some questions which were sent to us early on that said, we're interested in rehabbing a building or creating a building, and that's probably a little beyond our scope today as we introduce the concept. But these are things that we should be doing on our campuses that tie directly into crime prevention and crime prevention through environmental design. And we call it the Campus Environment Action Plan. Here's examples. Ernie had talked about lighting areas. Typically people think more lighting is better. Well, really it's more lighting in the appropriate places is better. And what we've shown here is one of our large universities in our nation, the University of Alabama, who creates a pedestrian lit path that they publish. Why that is? What that tells you is if you want your safest routes, you want your CPTED routes, the routes that they want you to take are defined on this map. That's an example. Lighting the right areas, not every area. Identify hazardous conditions and create safe conditions. These are simple things. This is curbing. This is sidewalks that are broken and cracked. These are walls and paved brick that is broken down. This ties directly into the fact that we want our campuses to look and feel safe. Ernie talked quite a bit about this thing about effective signage. It is a term called wayfinding, but really if you have good signage, good ability for people to know where they're at, that clearly creates an environment that people feel like they know the campus values them and create clear boundaries. That's that territorial reinforcement. So that's our action plan. Some of those things can cost money. And then you talked about low-hanging fruit. Well, this is low-hanging fruit. I think some of your listeners had asked about trimming down shrubbery to 2 or 3 feet in height, trimming up trees to 6 or 7 feet in height. Sometimes that's called the 2-foot, 6-foot rule, 3-foot, 7-foot rule. What it says is, if you're looking across your campus and you can't see through the campus to see other people, you probably have sight lines that are impaired. So you want your trees trimmed up, your bushes trimmed down to create good natural surveillance. We've talked a lot about graffiti. We know that graffiti can be persistent. You have a sign, it gets tagged, you remove it, it gets tagged, you remove it, it gets tagged. But ultimately, our staff have to be persistent about removing it, and it's a battle of wills. Who goes first? And we're going to wear them down and remove graffiti, pick up trash, put fresh paint on different places, maintain and clean your campus. This is your low-hanging fruit. These are things that tie in directly to CPTED. And then lastly, we've talked about property. We've talked about infrastructure, buildings, campuses. That's the heart of CPTED, but the reality is the way that we maintain our campuses and the way that we create safe and secure environments deals directly with the way we teach and train our staff. So while this is really a separate and distinct topic, we thought it's just important for our audience to understand that we understand that the way that we teach our staff, and these are bullets directly from some staff orientation that we do here at the college, ties directly into our CPTED rules. And these are the things we tell them. Be aware, alert, and vigilant. Be welcoming and challenging. The only thing I'll say about that term challenging is just like think Disney, think Walmart. They have people at your entranceways and exitways that say, how can I help you? Are you lost? What can I do for you? That is in CPTED standards challenging behavior, but it's in no way, shape, or form challenging. It's designed to say, what can I do for you, and do you belong where you're at? We call that challenging behavior. We explain that to our staff. Obviously, recognizing conditions and persons, and there's always a lot of interest these days about active threat, active shooter, and countering violent extremism. Ernie had showed you a picture of bollards. Bollards, while they're welcoming and create access control, also can deter this thing we call CVE, countering violent extremism. Where you put those types of designs can help deter the people that may be involved in doing something well beyond just hurting one person. This collateral damage and these things that we read about that are tragedies nationwide. And obviously reporting. If staff don't report what they see, nobody can be expected to resolve those issues. We referenced a slide called Comprehensive Safety at our campuses at the beginning. This is that return to what does our comprehensive look like? What does our comprehensive safety program look like? Look safe, feel safe, be safe. I thought this was probably, as we provide the resources, here's some contemporary resources and some different articles that have come up recently. So we thought people might be able to learn more about that. But the reality is, if you put in CPTED via a search engine, you're going to come up with an enormous amount of resources. And the partners that we mentioned at the beginning have a lot of resources. So we can stop there if you'd like and pause for questions.
Tremendous. A question did come up earlier that is a bit related to this slide. Sarah wondered if you have recommended books and resources for further reference, and of course you have a number on the slide, but perhaps are there a couple that you'd like to focus on in particular?
All right, well, thank you. Well, interestingly enough, in the middle of this particular Learn More, that's actually a federally produced document. Now, it's a little dated. It's that one called Using Crime Prevention Through Environmental Design and Problem Solving. But why I point to it, it is free, it is downloadable, and you have the title right there. So while, you know, all fields evolve as it relates to safety and security, and that one, like I said, has evolved a little bit, that's a resource that's free. The Campus Security Report, we have listed an article that's actually very, very current about low-cost campus CPTED tips. The National Crime Prevention Council in the top left has something that I just find fascinating, which is how do you boil down CPTED for our youth? And I'm not talking about typically our young adults on our college campuses. I'm talking about those in the primary grades. And I feel that that may be so valuable. And again, the terminology is not important. What's important is that they understand why things are safe and unsafe. So that's just a couple of highlights there. And we would always be available. I'm certain that the NCCPS archives information and certainly our contact information will be available if somebody has a specific area of CPTED that they would like more information on.
Are there any email lists or other electronic social resources where folks implementing CPTED get together and talk about what they're doing?
In fact, there is, and on the slide with our mugs, with our pictures on it, we'll give you a couple resources where you can, in fact, email or get on the list or join the organization. This is in no way, shape, or form intended to guide someone towards those, but there are CPTED organizations. There's one in Canada. There's an international European CPTED organization, and then the one that we're both presenting on behalf of, we call it FLDOCA, but you'll see that as we finish this afternoon.
Jim Frankese wonders, other than target hardening, do you have any ideas for keeping people from hanging out or engaged in illicit activity at a corner convenience store? We chase them away, make arrests, but they continue to return.
This is Ernie Long. That is a problem everywhere. Most of the time it can be taken care of by lighting. You can light it, you can clean up the area. Something is attracting those people to that location. You need to remove whatever it is that's attracting them. Sometimes it's because the corner is dark. Sometimes because the bushes are so high or there's a couple of cars parked there that have been there for years. Most of the time the environment will give you cues as to what's attracting those people to that location. It's something that you have to work on. Thinking outside the box is probably the hardest thing to do for most people. But look at that area, and you're probably going to see some type of cue in the environment that's attracting those people to that location.
One other concrete aspect that I've seen at convenience stores when I was with a municipality was the fact that often their natural surveillance, their sight lines through the glass are terrible. I don't know if this is the case for the audience member, but they have 14 beer posters, 35 cigarette posters, and then a whole host of other things. So while the staff member inside the convenience store is often very protected, they're unable to see outside those sight lines, and the store itself creates problems for them to be able to create safe opportunities for those who are outside the convenience store. So that's just something that comes to my mind anecdotally.
Jorge Vasquez Bello says, if your budget is very limited, and of course whose isn't, what element of CPTED would you focus on more? And I might ask first.
Well, great. So the low cost, the low-hanging fruit, the things that we do is deals with place maintenance. Clean up, remove the graffiti, put the fresh paint on, pick up the trash, make sure your trash receptacles themselves are clean, right, and where there is stuff. So these are the things, if we were to focus on, these are the ones that are not cost prohibitive. Building a new building, by the way, installing CPTED concepts, while we haven't focused on that today, is not cost prohibitive when it's done in the design stages. And many architects, we have an architect on our Florida Design Out Crime Association, many architects, many codes personnel maybe many crime prevention officers often know that they can build in these things at no additional cost to start. But your inexpensive things you can focus on, here's some of them. And lighting is particularly a critical CPTED concept, where you put appropriate lighting to the extent that the budget can support it.
Sherry Stone asks, do you know of any K-12 districts or institutes of higher education that have a requirement for architects to have CPTED training placed in their RFPs? I would love to have the verbiage that they use.
Well, both Ernie and I, that's the first stump question I think we've had this afternoon. I can tell you that it may not be at a higher education institution, but where you will find things that codify rules and regulations are often in municipal code or county ordinances. So I would say, without specific knowledge, start there. I know St. Petersburg and the Sarasota area has a tremendous amount of actual formalized language that deals with site review, things that we call first step, and design improvements that they have to do. I don't know of any on a higher education institution, but they would be subject to the cities and the counties in which they live, and so that's a couple. I would start with St. Petersburg. Our chair of the Florida Design Out Crime Association, I believe, actually had a hand in that, and we could provide that information via an email.
Matt Wheatbrock wants to focus on target hardening, and in particular, he's interested in resources and publications specifically about target hardening beyond what you've already listed.
There is a publication that we didn't put on that's a little more dated, and Ernie, you had mentioned that publication. It was the
CPTED Manual for Singapore, China. It's about 65 pages of CPTED concepts, covers everything from bathrooms to sidewalks to the fronts of buildings. It covers everything. It covers every plan you could possibly think of. And it's free. It's on the web. It's in English. And it's downloadable. It's just the CPTED Manual for Singapore, China. It's one of my favorite publications. It's required reading for all of my interns.
It's a good publication. And the other thing as it relates to this, I think that kind of borders on the CVE, Countering Violent Extremism. Those are things like what you do with your glass and what vulnerabilities you have with your sight lines, where you put your bollards, how someone can get into and act out of a building. And there is, in fact, a publication that deals with higher education, safety, and active threat. And while I don't know the term right now, if you search, you should be able to come up with that. It is a federal publication. It is free and downloadable. And if not, if that audience member wants to email me that question, I will have the answer by the end of today.
That's a great offer. You've said a fair amount about building a CPTED team and getting the staff together. A number of questions have come in. Let me give you a chance to say more about some best practices for building a CPTED team, and in particular, when you already employ former police and security professionals.
This is Ernie Long, and there's a misconception that all police officers and all security guards are trained in CPTED. Now, what I've done in the city of Aventura is I've offered free training to all the security companies that work in Aventura, and even if they have guards that are on site out of the city of Aventura, we still offer the free training because it's so important for everybody to know this information. Not every patrol officer knows CPTED. It's just one of those things. It's not included in the police academy because normally if the range runs over time, they take out the crime prevention training. It's just one of those things. The easiest way to make a team is to make sure that everyone's on the same page. All the people that are involved need to be trained. I've trained every person on our police department, including the administrative assistants. We've trained all the code staff. We've trained all the park staff. Everyone is CPTED trained in the city of Aventura, and that's how you build a team. The people take interest, and they join together.
I know that here in Gainesville and Alachua County, we have the University of Florida, which is kind of the four-year and the graduate institution, the flagship institution that Santa Fe College sometimes feeds into. And there is an urban and regional design and planning department. And as it relates to resources that you can get that have incredible expertise, at really, I'm going to say no cost, but in general that you can reach out to. For example, those are professors in that. We have a Dr. Richard Snyder, who's a professor emeritus at the University of Florida, and that's what he teaches, and he teaches projects. So when you find these people at your higher education institutions, that's a resource that you can reach out to, and often they have students who are learning the field, and they want to deal with these types of projects and questions in real time.
Alex Valiente says, we have an area on campus that attracts students to smoke and sell marijuana and hang out all hours of the night. We already removed the gazebo that had a ton of graffiti, and now they hang out on the concrete slab left behind. Unfortunately, it's next to a lake, and the lighting is not an option because of the turtles in the lake. What would you recommend?
Is that on my campus, or is that somewhere else? What campus are we talking about here?
We don't know.
It's an interesting question. You come up with these specific facts. Off the top of my head, this would be one that it would be important for that audience member to email me or call me, and let's talk it out. But when I hear a problem, for example, without lighting, and yet you don't have a lot of options for the way you control access control, my first thought goes to what nighttime staff. Remember, staff is an important part of comprehensive safety. What nighttime staff may be invested and that is able to report to campus security or campus police or agencies that we have mutual aid with. So we have nighttime custodians. Now, this is a group we have to train and is not always a group that is real keen on reporting things like this, but that's an example of making them aware of the problem. Who is on your campus 24/7? If campus security is, then that's going to be more frequent controls. Is there a manner in which you can provide some boundary setting there, whether it's high cost, removing the slab, or putting signage out there that says closed, if that's an option, at certain times. So it's a little more difficult without seeing the picture and where that lies on a campus, but these are some things that come to my mind, and I'd be happy to actually speak about those specific ones also.
And Alex says that he was from Florida International University. There were a number of comments, a number of questions on the registration about buy-in, getting buy-in from upper-level administration, especially when designing new buildings, and also buy-in for faculty. In the few seconds we have remaining, what can you say about how to tell the powers that be that they need to take CPTED seriously?
All right. Well, you don't have to tell them that. In the few seconds, I would say what you tell administrators is when you build your buildings, comply with building codes and site review and maps and design analysis, and have an architect or a project manager that has knowledge of the concept. That costs nothing. And what it does for your administrators or your student affairs professional, it reduces their accreditation costs, it reduces their liability and risk, and it may reduce their overall insurance costs because they're building structures that allow you to show why they're safer than the average structure that does not include CPTED design.
That's a great point to end on. Thanks very much, Ed and Ernie, and thanks to all of our viewers and questioners from around the Internet. Check the NCCPS webinars page for a link to the captioned recording of today's presentation, as well as a link to our speaker slides. The brief evaluation survey I mentioned earlier should already be in your mailbox. It will take you no more than 2 minutes to complete. Please do. We read and act on your comments. Mark your calendars for the next Campus Public Safety Online webinar, 1 to 2 p.m. Eastern Time on Tuesday, May 16th. This year, sadly, is the 10th anniversary of the tragic shooting at Virginia Tech, and next month's webinar will feature psychiatrist Victor Schwartz speaking on 10 years after Virginia Tech, impacts on campus mental health. The registration URL is on your screen and clickable, or surf on over to the National Center webpage at nccpsafety.org. That's nccpsafety.org. Campus Public Safety Online is brought to you by the National Center for Campus Public Safety, with support from the University of Vermont Continuing and Distance Education and the U.S. Department of Justice. Special thanks today to Megan O'Neill. This is Steve Worona. See you next time on Campus Public Safety Online.